Welcome everybody to this open session today. I am very happy to see you all, and we are so honored that Venerable Chodron is hosting the sessions today for us. So thank you very, very much. As you know, we do these open sessions regularly, and we ask teachers to give a 1 hour talk, sometimes a bit longer. So this is also what we're going to do today. Before we start, I would just like to give some quick information regarding the sound and the technical stuff. So we experienced that the sound from Sravasti Abbey was a little bit low. So if you feel like you need to increase the volume, please do so on your device. That would be good, or use headphones. And also, I would like you or encourage you to turn on your video so that Venerable Chodron can see you all. That would be very nice. And also today we have a translation from English to German. So Paul is translating for us. Please use the function down in the menu bar if you want to hear the translation into German. So maybe before we start, I'm sure that most of you, of course, know Venerable Chodron, but just to give a quick introduction, of course, Venerable Chodron trained for many years and received full ordination in 1986. Her teachers include His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tsenzhab Serkong Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and Lama Thubten Yeshe. She is the founder of Sravasti Abbey and is a renowned author and teacher. She teaches worldwide and is also actively engaged in prison outreach and interfaith dialogue. So we are very honored, Venerable Chodron, that you accepted our invitation and that you will talk today about working with anger. And without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so anger, right, that nobody here has. It's the other people who get mad at us, and they're wrong. Yeah, their anger is bad. Our anger is valuable, right? Right? Oh, people online, you don't seem to be agreeing with me. Yeah, when you're angry, don't you think your anger is right? Yeah, your anger is justified because if you let somebody else get away with something, the world might end. Yeah. Okay, so before we get into that, let's take a couple of minutes and we have some prayers that we do to start the session off. Yeah, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, and then a few minutes of silence to calm the mind. I'll give a meditation. Yeah, and by that time, then we'll go into the talk. Okay. So think of the Buddha in the space in front of you. You're surrounded by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And the Buddha is somebody that you can trust. And then think that we have all sentient beings seated around us. They all want happiness, they don't want suffering, but they don't know the Dharma. They're ignorant, they're confused, just like us. But we have the fortune of having met the Buddha's teachings. And so we'll take refuge and generate bodhicitta.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Let's recall our motivation that we wish to contribute to the happiness and welfare of others. And to do this, we have to develop ourselves first. Otherwise, as they say, it's the blind leading the blind. And so to develop ourselves, to cultivate our own good qualities, to attain full awakening, then we have to listen to teachings, reflect on them, apply them to our own lives, meditate on them. And so today we're doing that first step of learning. But learning is quite important. So let's get into it. Okay. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that I've been to the Tibethaus in past years, not recently, but a few times, and also met Rinpoche and some of your members in India, when we were there for His Holiness's teachings. And you people have, so much privilege to have Kyabje Sung Rinpoche come and teach you online and in person. Really, I can't describe how fortunate you are. So please take advantage of that and learn as much as you can from him. I was fortunate in that I knew the previous Sangha Rinpoche many years ago. Let me think, when I first met him, I was a baby nun. And so it must have been around 1977, 78, 79, somewhere in there. Okay. And so this was the previous one, and he was really something. I was fortunate to be the cook for where he was staying at someone's home, and I was the cook. People here wouldn't believe that now, but so
I got to see a little bit how he was in his daily life, and quite something. So please take advantage. Your center is quite special that way, because he doesn't go to every place that he's invited. Yeah. Okay. So, anger. Yeah, I usually start this off by remarking that if you're listening to this with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, partner, now is the time when you poke them and say, listen to this. She's going to talk about how to calm your anger. Okay, because it's always somebody else's anger that's the problem, right? Yeah. So, yeah, it's somebody else's anger. They don't understand me. They don't accept me. They're exaggerating their bias, their prejudice. They're not listening to me. You know the routine, and and in our mind, the solution to the problem is very clear. I'm right. You're wrong. You change. Very clear. Why do people get so confused when they're arguing? Yeah, just drop your view, accept my view, and then the problem's solved. Then we'll live happily ever after. Right? Right? Yeah, until we come to the Dharma, and then it gets pointed out to us that maybe we have some anger too. So I didn't think, when I came to the Dharma, I didn't think I had much anger. I didn't yell, I didn't scream, I didn't throw things, I didn't stomp out of the house and slam the door. So I thought, I don't have a problem with anger. Then, in my arrogance, thinking I didn't have a problem with anger, to illustrate to me that I was wrong, my teacher sent me to work in a particular Dharma center where I didn't get along very well with the other people, but it was all their fault. Yeah. They were biased against women. Yeah, so it's all their fault. But I was miserable because I kept getting angry. Yeah. And especially community meetings, they would make fun of me, they would tease me, and they would insult me. I was miserable. But that was the way my teacher had to show me that I had a problem with anger. Because without that, I wouldn't have even recognized in my own mind what was going on. Okay, so painful though it was, it introduced me to Shanti Deva's work. I had had teachings on this before, thank goodness, but chapter 6 of Bodhicharya Avatara, that became my go-to, because every day at my job at the Dharma Center, I would get angry, and every evening I would come back to my room and take out chapter 6. And what this taught me was it's not just about reading the Dharma, reading text, hearing teachings. It's about doing the hard work of looking at your own mind and identifying the afflictions in your own mind and admitting to yourself that you have them. Yeah. And then applying the antidotes. In other words, learning how to see the situation from another perspective so that we're not suppressing our anger. Okay. We're not, suppressing, justifying, doing those kinds of things to handle our anger. But we're actually looking at the thoughts that lie behind our anger. Yeah, we usually think that emotions are just emotions. I feel that way. Yeah, I feel that way. My feeling's right. I know the situation accurately, and any sane person in my situation would feel the same way. Okay. So that's how we usually look at emotions, as if they were true. They describe the situation exactly. And like I said before, the resolution is the other person should adopt my way of looking at things and change their attitude and their behavior. But when you study, some of you may have studied low rig, mind and awareness, and there they teach about conceptual and non-conceptual cognitions. Non-conceptual is like bare perception with our senses. We just perceive the raw data. Conceptual is how we interpret it, how we describe it to ourselves. So what is going on when we get angry is we are describing the situation. There's the sensual data. We're seeing somebody do something, hearing their voice or whatever. Yeah, that's the raw data. But then we take it and we interpret it. Yeah. And how do we usually interpret things? Through the viewpoint of me. Okay. So we all talk about wanting to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings who have been kind to us. But how do we look at every situation? Through the itty bitty teeny weeny periscope of me, I, my, and mine, and interpret everything through how it influences me, what it indicates about me. Okay. So what's going on when we get angry is, there's the raw data, hearing, seeing things, but then we interpret it in terms of how it affects me. Okay. So to give you a little example here, let's say Joe is sitting over here, yeah, and somebody walks in the room and, maybe a colleague of Joe's and looks at Joe and says, at work, I trusted you to do something, and then you delayed it and delayed it. Finally, when you got to it, you did it in a hurry. You botched the job. You made so many mistakes. And since I'm responsible for what I delegated to you to do because I trusted you, I am furious because now the boss is mad at me. Yeah. And it's your fault. Yeah. And yeah, you know the scene. Okay. So if Joe says that, if somebody comes in the room and says that to Joe, Joe's my friend. Yeah. And Joe's getting all agitated because, his boss came in and scolded him. I'm going to go, Joe, just, don't worry about it. Your boss has a lot of pressure on his head right now. And he took it out on you. You did, we worked together. I know you did a good job. It's okay. Don't worry about it. He'll calm down and you don't really have anything to feel bad about. So I would say that to Joe, kind of like, it's no big deal. Okay. Right? you do that for a friend. But if somebody walks in the room and says the same thing to me that they said to Joe, except instead of looking at Joe, they look at me and they say, I trusted you to do this, and then you procrastinated, and when you finally got around to do it, you really botched the job up, blah, 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 blah. If somebody says that to me, okay, this is a national disaster. How dare somebody criticize me? I did my best. It was somebody else's fault. I did my best. I didn't do anything. Why is the boss always getting on my case? This isn't fair. Oh, okay. Now, the question comes, when somebody said that to Joe, I said, Joe, it's nothing. You're okay. The boss is just in a bad mood. They say the same things to me, and wow, it means something totally different. Okay. Why? Because they did it to me. Me. Don't they realize who they're talking to, who they're criticizing? How dare they criticize me? Okay, and we get defensive. Yeah, but we don't say we're defensive. We say they're wrong. Yeah. And then we go and tell them off and tell them how they're wrong and put them in their place, because somebody's got to put them in their place. But let's go back. Why? When they said it to Joe, it wasn't a big deal. When they said it to me, it was a big deal. Yeah. This has to do with the way I'm interpreting something. Yeah. And whenever I interpret something in reference to me, it becomes much more important than when they criticize somebody else. Okay. Why? Because it's me. Yeah. So there's a certain amount of self-centeredness involved here, because everything that happens to me becomes a really big deal. Yeah. And since I don't want to admit any faults, because I don't have any faults, then when somebody criticizes me, it's very clear that they're wrong, that they're exaggerating. But then, if you've been to Dharma teachings, sometimes, you remember what your teacher taught. Yeah. Those occasions where you're getting mad and you remember what your teacher taught, and your teacher was saying anger is a defilement. Yeah. Why is it a defilement? Because it's not understanding the situation correctly, and because it's disturbing the mind. And then we go, not understanding the situation correctly? Could I be doing that? Oh, well, yes. Okay, because how am I not understanding it properly? Because I think the cause of suffering is the other person. And it's as if the words they say, just the vibration of the words, just the sound of the words, are saying, you're guilty, you're bad, you made a mistake. So when somebody looks at me and says that, Okay, I'm interpreting those words, yeah, and as if those words, have the meaning of saying, I'm a bad person. I made a mistake. My mistakes are unforgivable, Is the person saying that? No. Where is all of that coming from? My mind. Because I'm saying, I don't deserve this. I did everything I possibly could. I'm not wrong. Okay? But it starts with our interpretation. And what's interesting. It's as if just the sound waves of their voice, the sound waves, as if their sound waves carry anger with them. And as soon as those sound waves hit my ear, as soon as I inhale, now I'm angry. I caught it from them. They made me angry. Yeah, my anger is their fault. Right? Isn't that your normal way of looking at it? My anger is their fault. It's their responsibility. If they don't want me to be angry about what they said, then they need to apologize. They need to change their ways. Okay? And we look at it that way. And what's interesting is when we think that it's all somebody else's fault, when all my unhappiness inside is coming because of the environment and the people in the environment, when we think like that, we're giving our own power away because we can't control the environment. We can't control other people in it. Yeah. You can run away and go somewhere else. Yeah. But you'll probably have the same things happening there. Okay? So if we get angry, we're really giving our own power away, because then it means, I'm not going to stop being angry until they apologize, until they realize that I'm right and they're wrong. Yeah. And then we're kind of condemning ourselves to being unhappy. Right? Are you sure? No, really, it's their fault. Okay. So there's a few things going on here. First of all, we are thinking that their criticism just comes from outer space, that we did absolutely nothing wrong, and what they're saying is just, exaggeration and garbage. What we learn through the Dharma is about karma. Yeah. And as the modern saying goes, what goes around comes around. Okay? In other words, the energy put in the world, the way we treat other people, comes back to us. Okay? So when somebody is criticizing me, and we all hate to be criticized, it's because I criticize other people. Well, no, I don't criticize other people. They just make mistakes. And I do it out of compassion so that they can improve. And so you have to sit with that for a while, because underneath it doesn't feel quite comfortable. And then you come to terms with the fact well, yes, I do criticize other people. Yeah. Sometimes I criticize people to their face. sometimes I criticize them behind their back. That's a little bit safer. Yeah. Because if I criticize them to their face, they might speak bad to me. If I criticize them behind their back to one of my friends, then my friend will side with me, knowing that that person's bad and wrong. Okay. And then I also criticize them just in my own mind. Yeah, maybe I don't even say anything, but I go over the situation again and again. I ruminate. They said this. Oh, why did they say this? Then I start to psychoanalyze them. Well, they're actually passive aggressive. I'm not a therapist. I don't know anything about that, but I heard that term and it sounds very good. So they must be passive aggressive. Yeah. Or they must be bipolar. Yeah. Or they must be maybe schizophrenic. But I give them some kind of mental health diagnosis, because otherwise, why would they, criticize somebody like me? Okay. And then, then kind of you have this flashback from a teaching you heard where your teacher is saying, oh, sometimes the faults we pick out in other people are actually the ones that we have. Uh, 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 maybe, yeah. And so you start thinking about, well, yeah, do I criticize other people? Well, yes. And this was quite shocking to me to discover that not only that I criticize other people, but that I criticize other people more than they criticize me. Yeah. I think that I get more criticism than I give out. Yeah. Why? Because I'm a nice, sweet person. I'm innocent. They're the bad ones, And that conception prevents me from seeing, the, the reality of the situation, which is, yes, I criticize other people. And when I really think about it, like how often do people really criticize me? Yeah, not every day, unless I'm real sensitive, then they criticize me all the time. But if I'm not real sensitive, then I don't get criticized every day. Yeah. But how often do I criticize other people? Mm. If I include what I think, I criticize multiple people multiple times every day. So if I do this behavior, why am I so surprised when other people do the same behavior towards me? If we believe in karma, if we believe that when we do something, it plants, seeds in our mind that influence what we experience. We're taught that in the Dharma. So if I believe that, then, okay, why do I get criticized so much? Because I criticize others actually even more than I get criticized. So when it happens to me, why get so upset? Well, why do I get so upset? Yeah, because I have the seed of anger in me. Yeah, if I have the seed of anger in me, and if I'm in a bad mood, then all you have to do is say good morning to me, and I'll get angry at you. Okay, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it happens. Yeah, when you're in a bad mood, you will find somebody to get angry at. True or not true? Yeah. It's true, isn't it? Yeah. Just say good morning and, yeah, why are you saying good morning to me like that? Don't you respect me? I mean, all they did was say good morning because they care about you. Yeah. Okay, so are you beginning to see how so much depends on two factors? One, we have the seed of anger in us, the potential to get angry. Yeah, because we haven't realized emptiness yet. Yeah, we haven't completed the path yet. So this is happening. And not only do I have the seed of anger, but I was in a bad mood and I have a history for multiple lifetimes, if I'm honest with myself, of criticizing other people. So of course I'm going to get criticized. Of course. Why is it such a surprise? Hmm? And especially when we have buttons. Okay, do you have in Germany, do you talk about people having buttons, meaning the things that you're emotionally sensitive to? Yeah. Do you use that expression? You know, somebody pushed my buttons, meaning somebody said something that I was sensitive about. Yeah. So if I have buttons because I'm sensitive about something, yeah, and my buttons are like big red buttons, if we could make them physical, big red buttons that you don't even have to make an effort to push. You just walk by them and the vibration of the air moving sets off the button. Criticism, rejection, they don't understand me. You know, other person was walk by. But we are so ego sensitive that our internal button gets set off and we get angry. True or not true? It's true, isn't it? Yeah. And a story I like to tell about one of my friends when, and here you can really see how projection works, you know, because our misinterpretations have to do with our projections on somebody else. Okay, so I have a few stories. Which one should I tell? I'll tell a story about somebody else, not about me. Okay, so um, so we had a friend whose son just got engaged and to a woman from a different culture who lived in a different part of the country. Yeah, her family were immigrants, and they had fallen in love. They had gotten engaged. Yeah, and the fiance's parents were going to have a party, you know, to celebrate. And so, of course, they invited our friend to go to the party. Okay, so she got on a plane. She traveled from the north to the south. She went to the house, the fiance's house, rang the doorbell. Yeah, somebody opened the door. She walked in, and, you know, of course, she didn't know anybody. I mean, she knew her son. She had met the fiance a few times, but didn't know her real well. But, you know, she walked in, and there was the fiance sitting and talking to somebody. And our friend looked around and she's going, I don't know anybody. Yeah. And they invited me to this party, and there's my son's future wife, and she sees me, and I gave birth to the guy that she fell in love with, and she doesn't even get up and come to the door and say, welcome. She just continues talking to the person she's talking to. Oh, this is unbelievable. How could my son fall in love with somebody like this? You know, she knows I don't know anybody. I don't feel comfortable. All she has to do is get up and come and say hello and introduce me to a few people, and everything will be okay. But she's not doing that. So I'm done. Goodbye. And she leaves. Okay, can you imagine that happening? So she came back up to the Abbey, and she was mad. She was still mad. Yeah, this had happened like last week or the week before, and she came back up. Fiance is so nasty, you know. And okay, so we had just been studying nonviolent communication, which but Marshall Rosenberg, which I highly recommend. So we said, okay, let's do this, where you just describe to us the facts of the situation, no emotional words, nothing about what you thought she was thinking, nothing about what you were thinking and feeling. Let's, just describe to us the facts that everybody could agree on what happened. So she sat there. And she said, okay, I flew to Los Angeles. I went to the fiance's house and rang the doorbell. Somebody came and opened the door. I walked in. I saw the fiance talking to somebody. And then she stopped. That's all that happened. Everything else was her projection, her interpretation. Yeah, I know this fiance she's nasty, she doesn't appreciate me, blah, blah, blah. All of that, was not in the situation. The situation was, she rang the doorbell, somebody opened the door, she walked in, the fiance's talking to somebody. And she continued talking. That's it. Yeah. And then, so this is a really good situation of how we interpret what's going on, how we project motivations to the other people, how we project meaning to their speech, how we project, just even sometimes physical gestures. Yeah. And, when she did this and she realized how much of her anger was stemmed from her, came from her side. Yeah. Then she calmed down. Mm-hmm. So it's, this is something that is very precious to really think about, and look at our own mind, and see what is actually happening and what am I interpreting and what am I projecting from previous experiences, thinking that because something happened in the past, then this is the same thing. It's not. It's a different situation. Okay. So, but with these techniques that the Buddha taught, we have to really sit there and, look at some difficult stuff, making examples in our own life. Yeah. And then dissecting them, using our intelligence. Yeah. Not to analyze somebody else's psychological ailment, but to to analyze everything we're putting on the situation. Okay. And when we do that, the mind calms down. And then we begin to notice that we have certain patterns of interpreting things. Yeah. That similar situations, yeah, set off a whole, pattern of my interpretations and, my emotional reaction. And we begin to say, oh, that's coming from me. And this is when we regain our power. Yeah, when we begin to see that the defilements are things that have to do with our conceptual mind. Yeah? And, and when we begin to see how we exaggerate situations. Because in this situation, what's wrong with walking into a room where you don't know anybody? Nobody's, looking at you going, get out. No, everybody's having, it's a party and everybody's having a good time, and it's me who's, getting all insulted and everything. Okay. So this really gives us some power to look at situations differently. And this is really what the Buddha is teaching us, that we are not perceiving reality. Forget ultimate reality. We're not perceiving that. We haven't realized emptiness. But just conventional what's going on, we're perceiving so often our own fantasies, our own projections. Yeah. And when we begin to see this, then we begin to see that we can drop that. Yeah. Just drop it. I don't need to interpret everything that happens in the world in terms of me, I, my, and mine. Because I'm actually not the center of the universe. What a revelation. I'm not the center of the universe. I thought I was. Yeah. Okay. So that's a little bit about anger. Give you something to chew on. I did a book about anger called Working with Anger. It's plagiarized from Shantideva, chapter 6. His Holiness Dalai Lama also did a book about anger, also taken from that chapter. His is called Healing Anger. Yeah. So the thing is, if you need more information, read the book and don't just read it. Contemplate what it teaches. Yeah, because that's the key. We can read and intellectually understand, but unless we sit on the cushion and really take it to heart and try and see things differently, unless we do that, we get really stuck. Yeah, and then you grow old being an angry person. And I don't think any of us really want to grow old to be bitter, angry people. Okay, so I think there's some time for questions and comments. Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to the audience. There's people here in the room, and then there's people online, so feel free to have a comment or ask a question, whatever you like.
maybe it's just a comment, Venerable, but I asked you many, many years ago, why thinking things as inherently existent, why it's such a big deal, why we're stuck in samsara.
Yeah.
But this whole talk, if I see myself as inherently I and everything, my, me, my, mine, the conventional reality is so conflated with, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to, after all these years, understand that as long as I see myself as solid, autonomous, and I see you as that, I see everybody as that, I'm beginning to understand why I still suffer.
Yeah.
And I think the angry, I was kind of a lot like you, Venerable, that I didn't think I was an angry person. But once I got in touch with that, it's a lot about the agenda that I use in my life to navigate this self. And so this whole idea about seeing things as inherently solid, autonomous, independent is beginning to be clear about why these afflictions arise and why we suffer so much.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about, Venerable, to be able to tease that apart? If we only understood maybe more about the conventional part of our life and not this crazy inherent existence, how would that change the dance? How would it change our relationships if we could understand a little bit more clearly?
Okay. So beginning to see how our conception of I and seeing it as something concrete, that needs to be defended. Yeah. An independent self. Seeing how that lies behind many of our problems is already a lot of progress. Yeah. Because let alone not perceiving conventional reality, ultimate reality, we don't perceive conventional reality either. Okay. But we think, okay, I recognize I'm ignorant. I don't understand ultimate, but I'm seeing conventional. No, we aren't. We aren't. We're exaggerating it because if our viewpoint were the one correct one, then, and it was an objective reality out there, then everybody would see the situation just the same way we do, which they don't. Okay, that's telling us that there's different perspectives and that when we filter everything, through I, there's an independent I, that is very attached to its pleasure. And the more attached to its pleasure I am, the more I get upset when somebody interferes with that or somebody does something I don't like. And we begin to see, how our mind operates. Okay, so realizing emptiness is going to take a while, but this is why the Buddha taught all these other methods for how to look at situations from a different perspective, so that we're not suppressing the anger, but we just look and it's like, there's nothing to get angry at. Yeah, makes some sense. Anybody online have a question?
So we have actually a question in the chat, but it's in German. So
Yeah.
I will try to translate it.
Thank you.
The question is there a constructive way of dealing with anger? So if we could not suffer, also our mistakes would be meaningless. And then there is a reference to Karl Popper. He says like the mistake would be something like contact to reality.
Like what?
So there's I think he is referring to the philosopher Karl Popper.
And we're not getting Your voice, did anybody, what? To Gampopa, yeah. No.
To the psychologist Karl Popper.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not familiar with him.
So the I think the final question that is asked here is, can anger lead to contact to reality? So I think this is like really a word that is used by Karl Popper. I try to maybe ask some translation.
Can anger lead to contact with reality?
Can anger lead with contact with reality? Once I was asked to speak about anger to some people at a university who were specialists in mediation. They taught mediation. And they, when I started talking about the defects of anger, the faults of getting angry, they got very upset with me and said, but anger is good because anger lets us know when something is wrong. So that sounds kind of what you're saying there, that anger helps us see the reality of the situation. Okay. That is, and then saying anger is good because of that. Well, if anger helps us to see the reality of the situation, is that the only way to see the reality? In other words, only anger helps us to see that something's wrong. Yeah. Why should anger be the only way? Yeah. And that's very different from what His Holiness Dalai Lama says. Yeah. His Holiness, when, I saw an interview one time. Somebody from an American newspaper was interviewing His Holiness. And this was many years ago. But they were saying, you became a refugee from your own country. The Chinese communists occupied Tibet. There's been environmental destruction. There's been, something almost bordering genocide, so many people getting killed, thousands, tens of thousands, now hundreds of thousands of Tibetans having to flee from their own country. And this reporter said to His Holiness, all of that's going on. Why aren't you angry? And His Holiness sat there. He said, well, if I were angry, I couldn't eat well. I wouldn't sleep well. I would be a grouchy person to everybody. What benefit is there from being angry? And yet, he knows that something was wrong. Yeah. And he knows that the occupation and the takeover of Tibet by the Chinese communists was wrong. And he knows that people are suffering. But what he's done consistently, is don't hate the Chinese. Don't hate the communists. Yeah. And don't do things that harm them. And he's really stuck, to his moral principles. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why he won the Nobel Peace Prize and why people internationally respect him. He sees the reality of the situation, but he's not angry about it. But he doesn't roll over and he's not passive about it either. He talks about it to the world, and explains what happened to Tibet to the world. But he does this without speaking angry and hateful words and without inciting the Tibetans to, do anything violent. So maybe Hal Popper needs to talk with His Holiness. Okay, yeah? Can you pass?
Venerable, would you please help me with some advice? Let's say that the situation is pretty much the same you were describing with John, I don't remember the name, but somebody is coming into, we have like a meeting, and somebody is coming one day and is screaming at one person, and next day is coming and complaining about a different one, and next day to a different one, and next day to, so obviously there is something happening.
Yeah.
So, and we have the chance to talk with that person and say, maybe you could say things in a different way, even if you're right or wrong. And that person was still doing the same. So all of us, we were angry. And of course, we were working with our own anger.
Yeah.
anger.
We were angry that he was angry.
Yeah. So what could be like a helpful way to deal in groups when there is something going on in that?
Yeah. In groups, I mean, it depends who's in the group and the reason for the group being formed. So there's so many different factors that I can't just give one thing, yeah, that to do this. So sometimes the situation is such where you realize, okay, something is setting somebody off. You know, inside of them, they have had a button that being pushed because they're getting upset at something that nobody else is particularly upset about. In that case, you may go one-on-one and just talk to that person, you know, and because sometimes people just need to feel like they've been heard, like they can just go, "Bleh," and somebody says, yes, I understand how you're seeing it. You're not affirming that you agree with it, but you're saying, yes, I understand how you could see that. And sometimes that alone will just calm somebody down. Yeah, because they feel, okay, I've said it and somebody has heard it. That often is more helpful to do one-on-one, because if you try in front of the group, all you need is one person in the group to get agitated and to attack back, and then it doesn't work. Okay. If the person is a Dharma person, then you might go to them and say, it sounds like you're angry, and and then discuss it from a Dharma perspective. Okay, so it really depends on the person, the situation, many different things. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Well, we're already 5 minutes over time. And I know Germans like to keep on the clock. Otherwise, they may get mad at me. So we'll close. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was very great. I think we can, as Germans, we can now better try to get our anger in check when something is not on time or punctual. So thank you so much for this. We are very much looking forward. If you next time you visit Europe, please also come to Germany. We would really appreciate you visiting Tibethaus, Germany. And I would also like to take this opportunity to give you information about upcoming event next weekend. So Geshe Dorje Damdul, the director of Tibethaus New Delhi, is coming to Europe, and he's also visiting Tibethaus in Germany. And he is going to talk about the text Recognizing the Mother, a song on the experience of the middle way view. So this event is also accessible online. If you're interested, please visit our website. And yes, with this again, very, very thank you so much for this. We really appreciate your time and everything you're doing. And yeah, I hope you all have a very nice Sunday and a very good start ahead of the week. So thank you
And
so
I
much.
appreciate everything that the center is doing and all the people in it. Thank you very much for all of that. And you're all very welcome to come visit Sravasti Abbey, yeah, and spend some time with us. So please consider that. And then we have some verses to chant to dedicate the merit.
Due to this
This
merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forever.
Okay, thank you. Take care.